Hello students, a very good evening to all and welcome back to Daily Current Affairs of 30th of July. So for today's discussion, we have four very important articles. So three articles are from The Hindu and last article is from PIB. So in the first article, we shall be discussing about the concept of the retrospective green clearances with respect to different infrastructure projects and other kind of projects in India. Let me change the color. Yes, so here we shall be discussing what was the recent take of Supreme Court of India on these retrospective green clearances. Next article is very concerning thing for India because the Senate in USA is trying to fast forward the act which can impose up to 100% tariffs on the nations which are importing the Russian crude oil as well as natural gas. So India is one of them. That's why this thing is concerning for India. Next article is related to the global gig work law. So we shall be discussing that why India has refused to uphold a global gig work law. And finally, recently there was change in the base year of consumer price index. So this article is from PIB. So we shall be discussing this. Discussing this topic. Okay, so let's start with our discussion. So recently, Supreme Court has said that retrospective green clearances to different kind of projects cannot be given. Even if they are given, they can be given in very important cases or in the emergency situations. So see, first of all, let's discuss what is the news. So recently, Supreme Court struck down the 2021 Office Memorandum that allowed the ex post facto environmental clearances. So, to understand this complete news, you must have a basic idea about what is the environmental clearance. So, basically, environmental clearance is nothing but a government approval. It is a kind of government approval, and why this approval is required? This approval is required whenever you have to start any new project. So see, if you have to start any new project, it's not like you will just purchase the land and you will start the construction of the project. No. First of all, you have to obtain environmental clearance or the no objection certificate from government side. And then if you get the certificate or if you get the clearance, then only you can start the construction. So see, when the government has to provide the environmental clearance, first of all, government will conduct the environmental impact assessment or the overall environmental study. So for example, if you want to construct a chemical factory in a particular area, so government will analyze that what will be the impact of this factory on air pollution, on water pollution, on nearby trees, on nearby biodiversity. And if the government thinks that impact will be huge, then maybe government will not give the approval also. So here first process will be the environmental impact assessment. So if the impact is huge, the clearance will not be given. If the impact is not huge and compensation can be provided, so after that clearance will be provided. After that your construction can begin and after that you can start the operations. So this is the concept of environmental clearance. Now, what is the concept of ex post facto environmental clearance? So, ex post facto means after that. That means your project has already started. Now, after that, you are seeking the environmental clearance. So this is just opposite to environmental clearance because the basic concept of environmental clearance says that first you have to obtain the clearance. After that, you can start the construction of the project, right? So, ex post facto clearance says that you start the construction, you start the operations. After that you can seek the clearance. So now coming back to the context, so context says that Supreme Court has struck down the 2021 office memorandum because this office memorandum allowed the ex post facto environmental clearance. So this is the complete context that we discussed about clearance. We discussed ex post facto clearance. Now Supreme Court has said that ex post facto clearance is not allowed. So see, since the context is discussing about the 2021 office memorandum, please understand this. So in 2021, what government did, government have released the office memorandum, and that office memorandum says that ex post facto environmental clearance is allowed. Now please understand basic thing about office memorandum. See, first thing is the basic law, right? The main law which is created by the legislative body. Now, to implement the provisions of that law, to implement different policies, generally central government releases the office memorandum. The main purpose of office memorandum is to implement different kind of government policies. But important thing is that office memorandum cannot override the provisions of the actual act, because office memorandum is a law which is created by the executive body, and the actual legislation is created by the legislative body, right? So here, this 2021 office memorandum was created by the executive body, and the actual environmental law, that is Environment Protection Act of 1986, to implement this Environment Protection Act of 1986, a notification was released in 2006. That was Environment Impact Assessment Notification of 2006. So this notification is a kind of delegated legislation. Delegated legislation means the legislation which is created to implement the provisions of the actual legislation. So here Supreme Court is saying that this office memorandum cannot override the actual provisions which are given in the notification of 2006, because notification of 2006 is a kind of delegated legislation. So this notification of 2006 says that obtaining prior environmental clearance is must. That means ex post facto environment clearance is not allowed. So if the notification says that this is not allowed, then office memorandum cannot override that provision, because office memorandum is created by the executive body, right? And so this thing is there. Now, second thing why you cannot do this, because it will encourage the principle of pollute first and pay later. But this is not the case, right? First of all, you have to do analysis, and if that, according to analysis, if your construction is polluting that particular area, then clearance must not be given. But this is against that approach. Next thing is, it is violating the precautionary principle, meaning that first of all you have to take the precautions. You have to ensure that environment is not polluted, then only you can start the process. Next is, it is against the sustainable development, because sustainable development says that environmental development as well as economic development must go hand in hand. But here what you are doing, you are prioritizing the economic development. That's why this is the violation of sustainable development. Next thing is, this is violation of article 14, that is right to equality. Why this is violation? Because, for example, there are two companies, company A and B, and if company have taken the prior clearance, so in that company have invested a lot of time, it has invested a lot of money. But what company B did, company B started the construction and started its operation without taking the clearance. So here everything was speed up. So here this will be disadvantage for company A, right? That we followed all the procedures, and we have now a lot of time is invested, a lot of money is invested. So this is against right to equality under Article 14. Next comes Article 21. So this is also violation of Article 21, because every person, every animal, every tree have the right to clean environment. So here, if the environment is polluted, then this is against the Article 21 of the Constitution. Now, let's discuss other important Supreme Court observations. So, other observations were that administrative instructions which were issued by the government cannot override the delegated legislation. That means office memorandum cannot override the 2006 notification. Next thing is the prospective effect. That means, see, the projects which are ongoing at present. So, there are some projects which have already started, but clearance is not provided. So Supreme Court is saying let these projects continue, because if you stop these projects, there will be huge financial losses. So for all these projects, this thing will continue. Now the recent judgment of Supreme Court can be applicable on the future cases. Now next thing is, Supreme Court has also said this, that even if in future the retrospective, so Supreme Court says that, yes, just a second. Yes. So Supreme Court says that even if in future ex post facto clearance is required, then using my powers under Article 142, I can provide that clearance in the emergency situations. So this was the overall article. Now, next important article is about the act in USA, which is related to the imposing sanctions on Russia and Iran. So see, actually at present, this has not been converted into act. This is in the stage of bill only. But actually the US Senate is trying to advance the process, or it is trying to fast track the process so that an act can be made. Now, if this act is made, then it will impose the tariffs of up to 100% on imports from the countries that are the countries which are using the Russian oil as well as natural gas. So, for example, we also know about India that India is buying India is buying Russian oil and natural gas at discounted price. So, for example, if a product of India is being sold in US for $100, and after imposing this tariff of 100%, that product would be sold in USA of $200. So now the competitiveness of this project will reduce, right? No one will buy this product. No one will buy this product of India. So this will be a disadvantage of India. That's why this is a cause of concern. So yes, so let's discuss the background first, that why USA is doing this. What is the requirement of this? So why USA is doing this, because see what happened in 2002. In 2002, war happened between Russia and Ukraine. So in that war, what happened in that war, when Russia invaded Ukraine, so during that war, USA and European countries imposed sanctions on Russia. And what was the objective? Why sanctions were imposed? The objective was that if we are imposing sanctions on Russia, then Russia will not be having enough money to fund this war, right? So in that way, the war would be stopped. So this was the basic objective. But what Russia did, Russia sold its oil or natural gas at discounted price to various developing countries, for example, India or China. So still Russia was earning money, because the objective of USA was that let's impose tariffs so no one will buy all the products of Russia and Russia will not be having the money. But how Russia earned money? Russia sold its oil and natural gas at discounted prices to different countries, for example, India and China. So because of that, continuously Russia was receiving the money. So now US has come up with the new strategy. So the strategy of USA is that since USA cannot stop Russia from selling oil or natural gas, right? Because every sovereign country have its own right to sell whatever they want. So now USA is trying to influence the partner countries. So now USA is trying to discourage the countries who are buying oil or natural gas from Russia. So this is a very good example of the secondary sanctions or the indirect economic pressure. Yes. So this is the example of secondary sanctions or the indirect economic pressure which USA is putting on the partner countries. Now, if we discuss about India, because just now we discussed that this is a concerning thing for India, right? If the 100% tariffs are imposed, if the act is passed, this will be a concerning thing for India. So what is the reason for that? Reason is that you already know that India imports around 85 to 90% of its crude oil requirements. And why India is importing Russian oil? Because Russia is giving oil at discounted price. And this is a good thing for India, right? Because during the West Asia crisis also we discussed that import bills of India is rising. Because of that, current account deficit is rising. And because of that, the value of Indian rupee is reducing, or the rupee is depreciating. So because of all these things, India was buying Russian oil. So this is the thing, that if India is buying Russian oil, then it will reduce import bill, right? It will reduce the depreciation of Indian rupee. Eventually it will control inflation, or it will reduce the inflation, as well as it is very important thing for India's energy security. Now, there was a carve out provision which was mentioned in the bill. What is carve out provision? So, this provision in the bill says that if the countries are importing less than 15% of Russia's natural gas imports, so whatever imports Russia is doing of its natural gas, if any country is importing less than 15% of that, then that country can be exempted from the tariffs. So here that country have to import less than 15% of natural gas exports, and that country must promise that eventually they will reduce the dependence on Russia's exports. So that country can be exempted. But here the important thing is India cannot receive exemption, because India is importing significant quantities of Russian crude oil. So this is a cause of concern for India, and now we have to see in the upcoming days that how India is responding to it. Yes. Now, next important article is about the global gig work law. So here, first of all, understand the context. What happened on 12th June, this year only on 12th June, the International Labour Conference have adopted the ILO Convention number 193. So see, first of all, you must know about International Labour Organization, right? That this is a specialized agency of United Nations. Now, International Labour Conference is the decision-making body of ILO. So now this decision-making body have adopted ILO Convention 193. So actually, these conventions, the number of these conventions, which are many times in news, these becomes very important for the prelims, because I think UPSC have already asked one question related to ILO convention, which was related to, I think, child labor. So this convention also you have to remember. So recently, ILO Convention 193 was adopted, and its main function is or the main theme is the decent work in the platform economy. So please remember, ILO Convention 193 is related to decent work in the platform economy. So platform economy is a kind of economy where the workers as well as customers, they engage with each other on a mobile app. So for example, here you have any mobile app. That mobile app can be any app. For example, Ola or Uber or Swiggy, Blinkit. These are the mobile apps. So on these mobile apps, the workers as well as customers will be interacting, and this kind of, and the economy which is created around it, it will be known as the platform economy. So see, first of all, let's understand about this convention which ILO has adopted. So this is important because this is the legally binding international treaty to protect the gig or the platform workers. So this convention 193, which was adopted, why this is very important, because this is the first legally binding international treaty which will provide the social security protection or different kind of protection to the gig or the platform workers. So gig or the platform workers who are working on these platforms, right? So for example, the delivery boys, right? Or for example, cab drivers, all these are the gig workers. So here, if we talk about the outcome of this convention, so in this convention, all total 406 countries voted in favor. That's why it was adopted. 8 countries voted against it, and 36 countries abstained from voting. That means they did not vote. Important thing here is that India was among those countries who abstained to vote. Now, this is a very shocking thing, because in India, the gig workers or the platform economy is huge, right? So, this is a major cause of concern, that why India abstained from voting in this convention. Though this convention was adopted, but India abstained. And in that abstinent also, you must remember three things, that whenever we talk about ILO convention or International Labour Conference, so here three type of delegations will be there from all the countries. So there will be delegation of workers, there will be delegation of employers, and there will be delegation of government. So because generally in every kind of convention, only government delegation is there, but in ILO you will be having these three type of delegation. So the employer and employee delegation voted in the favor, but the government delegation abstained. So this we have to discuss. Now, before that, quickly let's discuss about ILO or International Labour Organization. So this is the specialized agency of United Nations, and its headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland. Now, it was established in 1999. That means it was established before World War One. And what was its objective? Its objective was to provide the decent working conditions for the workers. That means conditions must be safe, the wages must be fair, etc., etc. So these were some of the conditions. Now, please remember, just now we discussed that ILO have the tripartite structure. That means from every country you will be having three representatives. So government, employers, as well as the workers. And all these three will vote the independently. It's not like that these three together will be, the vote of these three will be counted as one. So these three will be voting independently. Now, let's discuss what was the need of this convention 193. So the need of this convention was because of the different kind of challenges which were faced by the which are actually faced by the gig workers. So what are those challenges? First of all, these workers do not receive the Just a second. These workers do not receive the paid leave. Because see, if we talk about the gig workers, so these are not the permanent workers, right? These are the temporary workers. Or the working hours of these workers are flexible. That means generally they are paid on per hour basis, on per work basis. So that's why they don't have any kind of security. For example, they don't have any health insurance or they don't receive paid leave. That means they don't have any kind of job security. That's why this convention was needed. Now, one of the disadvantage which these platform workers are facing is the algorithmic management. That means, for example, this is a gig worker, that is A. So this worker is working on platform considered as Swiggy. Okay, so this worker is working on Swiggy. Now, in a complete day, this worker would be receiving a lot of orders, right? So now this person would be delivering a lot of orders. Now, there is no one at the back end, no person is at the back end who is managing that how many orders person A will be receiving in a day. That thing is managed by any AI or software. That means that thing is managed by algorithm. So maybe in one day algorithm might provide 10 orders, or maybe in one day no order is provided. So no one is there to see because no person is there at the back end. So all these things are done by AI or software. So how many orders A will be receiving, whether A will be receiving a good ratings or not, performance ratings or not, or any incentive A will be receiving, or all these things will be decided by software. No person is going to decide. And sometimes this might also happen, the account of A might also get suspended, and there is no one to question because this is done by the machine. That's why these workers are always at the disadvantage, and because of that only this ILO convention, this ILO convention 193 was needed. So now let's discuss what kind of benefits this convention is providing. So actually this convention is providing the minimum rights for the platform workers. Minimum rights, that means no matter how many orders you get in a day, you must get fair wages. And that too, these wages must be provided in a timely manner. Along with that, it talks about the social security. So you must have some kind of social security like PF or all these things. There must be transparency in the algorithmic decisions. That means why this machine have not provided me any order of the day, or why this machine has suspended my order, so or suspended my account. So everything must be transparent. Next thing, human review of automated decisions. That means if any platform worker thinks that decision which was taken by algorithm was not correct, so human review must also be done. So basically this convention is related to minimum rights for the platform workers. Now, let's discuss one more thing under this convention, ILO Convention 193. So, see what happens generally, companies do not, generally, these companies who are operating this platform economy, so generally they do not call their workers as the employers because, employee. Because if they call them as employee, then they have to provide some kind of social benefits. So, okay, social security benefits. So generally, company call these workers as the partners or delivery associates, etc., etc. But the ILO convention says no matter what you call your worker, but you must have to provide the basic or minimum fair wages to these workers. So it doesn't matter whether you call them as the delivery partner or whether you call them as the employer, whether you call them as the employee, it doesn't matter. But at least you must provide the basic benefits to these workers. And if we talk about India's current position, so also under the Code on Social Security 2020, India is already recognizing gig workers as well as platform workers. But now we have to discuss that why did India abstain? So these are some of the reasons that why India abstained. First thing is that labor in India is a concurrent subject. So whatever decision will be taken in this country, so this the decision on the concurrent subject will be based on the decisions, will be based on the discussions between states as well as central government. Next thing is, if India adopted this convention or if India signed this convention, then this would have a lot of financial as well as legal implications in India. So that's why India said that India have to first study the impact. of all these things on the digital economy, on the platform economy, then only we can take this decision. But there is disagreement also. Disagreement why? Because according to a report of Niti Aayog, by 2029-30, around 2.3 crore workers will be under the gig economy. So this was very important for India to adopt this convention, because at present also many workers still lack social security, accidental insurance, etc., etc. So I think India could have signed this convention, but okay, India had, the government have its own reasons. So we are just assuming that after proper discussions, somewhere in the future, government would be adopting this convention. Now, next article is related to consumer price index. So recently, Ministry of Statistics have revised the base year for the consumer price index, and the base year is changed from 2012 to 2024. Now, if we talk about the consumer price index, so basically, consumer price index is nothing but a kind of index which measures the change in the price of goods and services which are actually used by the consumers. Because so it is very different from the wholesale price index. Because WPI does not measure the price of goods, and the WPI does not measure the prices which are actually used by the consumers. So it does not measure price of those goods. But CPI measures the prices of goods and services which are actually purchased by the consumers. So basically, it is the measure of the retail inflation in India. Retail, because consumers are using it. Now, the bigger question is that why base year is changing? Because in 2026, we observed base year of different things are changing, right? The important thing is that earlier base year was 2012, right? Now base year is 2024. So earlier, during a time of 2011-12, many services were there which were not very prevalent, right? For example, the Wi-Fi services, or the subscription of OTT platforms, or the online shopping, or the online food delivery apps. All these things were not very common in those times. So here, even if today we continue with the base year of 2012, that means we are not including the services which are very prevalent in recent times. That's why we that's why it is required to change the base year, so that we adapt with the changing conditions. Now, what is the new change in the what are the changes in the new CPI series? So these are the major changes. First thing is the consumption basket is updated. So just now I discussed the products which were not consumed in those times. Now we are consuming those products. That's why earlier item used to be 299, and now items have changed to 358. Now, next thing is more markets are covered, because see, earlier if you want to calculate or estimate the price of a particular good or service, then you used to see in the rural markets as well as urban markets. But online or e-commerce markets are the new addition, because nowadays these kind of markets are more prevalent. Now, let's discuss the importance of CPI. The first importance of CPI is that the products which are measured by CPI, those products are actually used by the consumers. So this index shows that how over a period of time prices are changing. Next thing is, to estimate the monetary policy, RBI uses consumer price index only. So based on the consumer price index, RBI will realize that what is the level of inflation, and based on that, RBI will decide whether you have to increase the repo rate or you have to decrease the repo rate. Next comes the government policies. So based on the consumer price index, government would be knowing the inflation, and based on the inflation only, government would be providing the money under different kind of welfare schemes. Now, a practice question for you. So please pause the video and try to answer this question in the comment section. So that's all from my side for today.